The story begins with Yohei, excited to finally start attending the Aleister Academy and wonders if any of his old schoolmates are chatting about him right now. This reminds him that some Aleister students had fan sites before they even enrolled and pulls out his ancient iPhone 6 to do a little bit of Googling. However, he gets furious after seeing the article where he's already getting cooked by the main character of that school and throws his phone in anger, wondering why he's already being treated like a climate change activist. But just then, the delusions take over, and he begins imagining everyone fawning over him, which ends up improving his mood. Yohei figures that he knows himself the best and must be some loser with a lot of free time to write an article like this. Apparently, Geist X Revenant is a game where the main character who uses Geists and his fellow Geist users solves the mysteries of the world. It's a fantasy-themed RPG game that takes place during school. But in reality, a game with this title doesn't even exist, and knowing that he's someone who's packing a mighty schlong, there's no way he'll be defeated in the beginning. With that being said, he summons his Geist known as the Green Ogre. A Geist is a literal spirit that only 1 in 10,000 people in the world can manifest. Those who can manifest them can use them for a variety of things, which should remain a secret for obvious reasons. Yohei's Geist is a goblin with the same height as Kevin Hart, and even though the name he gave that goblin is Green Ogre, the wiki mentions that it likes Gabubai better. Afterward, Yohei questions Gabubai, asking if it's a female, to which she agrees. This comes as a shock to Yohei as he has never heard of a goblin who's a female. In the end, he calls it a coincidence and looks at the article in distress. Furthermore, Yohei asks if she likes the name Green Ogre, to which she disagrees, and when Yohei asks what she thinks about Gabubai, a bright smile appears on her face, forcing Yohei to call her Gabubai from now on. The next day, Yohei prepares to go to school, and when his mother asks if he wants breakfast, he disagrees and leaves the house. As soon as he reaches his new school, an overwhelming amount of excitement takes over him, reminding Yohei that Aleister Academy is the only 2 schools in the country made for Geist users. Additionally, he remembers what the article said about him and figures that there's no way he's placed in Class 1-2. But to his surprise, the article turns out to be correct, and he's indeed placed in Class 1-2. At the entrance ceremony, the principal, whose looks max, greets everyone and hopes that they all have a wonderful life with their Geist. Meanwhile, Yohei notices that his classmates are exactly as described on the article, which includes the class president Aya, the main character's best friend, Yuichi, and the upcoming saintess named Cecil. There's a lot more heroines and supporting characters, but these 3 are his classmates, and now, the article is looking too good to be a coincidence. Just then, the student council president named Sakuya greets everyone, and her mommy milkers instantly grabs Yohei's attention. However, Yohei is just a trash mob compared to Sakuya, who's the strongest character standing before the final boss. The fact that she's in this school means that he really is a trash mob in this game world. Later in class, their teacher named Asuka introduces himself and asks everyone to introduce themselves in order. Additionally, he tells everyone to summon their Geist as well and inform everyone what they're like. Before long, Yuichi introduces his Geist named Trickster, and Cecil also shows everyone her Geist calls Golvague. Yohei expected all these major characters to be strong, and remembering what the article said about him, he tries to make himself believe that his Geist is pretty amazing as well. With that being said, his turn arrives and he introduces himself along with Gabubai. But to his surprise, the whole class gets silent, followed by everyone laughing and mocking his Geist for being a powerful goblin. In the end, Yohei is forced to unsummon Gabubai. Asuka also barely controls his laugh and asks the students to continue on, not knowing how frustrated Yohei feels. After the introductions, Asuka tells everyone to use a Geist reader, which lets them check their school's achievement along with the status of their Geist. With that being said, he asks everyone to summon their Geist and have them check its status. As expected, all the Geists have amazing stats, and eventually, Gabubai's turn arrives and Yuichi begins making fun of the goblin, causing everyone else to get curious about Gabubai's stats as well. Yohei asks Asuka to let him check the stats at home, but he refuses to give him any special treatment. In the end, he asks Gabubai to touch the screen and finds out that her stats are pretty pathetic. Just then, Yuichi tries taking a peek, but Yohei instantly pulls the tablet away, trying not to show him. However, Aya manages to steal Yohei's tablet and mentions how weak the goblin is. While Yohei tries taking it back, Aya reveals Gabubai's stats to everyone. Ultimately, Yohei manages to get it back, and seeing everyone continue to make fun of him, he bolts out of class. After returning home, he runs straight upstairs, ignoring his mother, and locks himself in his room. There, he lets out his anger by throwing his bag and punching the bed with tears in his eyes. Following that, he notices that Gabubai seems pretty sad and asks her if she wishes to get stronger. Gabubai agrees with teary eyes, and the two of them fist bump each other, deciding to get stronger together and take revenge. With that being said, Yohei decides to come up with a way to get stronger and figures that he only has 5 months, as after that, the protagonist will be transferred to this school, and if he doesn't get stronger, he'll be a trash mob forever. Following that, he asks Gabubai if she prefers to become a red cap or a hobgoblin. Apparently, Geists can change classes after they reach a certain level, and goblins are able to either become red caps at level 50 or hobgoblins at level 20. But as Gabubai is unable to speak, Yohei tells her to take his right hand if he wants to turn into a red cap and his left hand if he wants to turn into a hobgoblin. To his surprise, Gabubai picks the right hand, wanting to become a red cap. Following that, Yohei suggests aiming for the red cap class change, but after checking the stats of a red cap, Yohei realizes that she'll still be weaker than his school's Wi-Fi. But seeing Gabubai full of hope, he lets her know that changing classes isn't the only way to improve abilities and decides to find another way. Additionally, he has to make sure that the protagonist doesn't make mincemeat out of him when the time comes. The next day, Yohei goes to school once again, thinking that he has to attend classes because he needs to enter the school's domains. Apparently, there are monsters called wraiths in a domain, and defeating them gives necessary materials to level up. However, he can't even think of beating any domain right now, and his best bet is to try and beat the beginner's domain. Additionally, he is really grateful to the Y-Kai article page and plans to make the most of this situation so he can get stronger. Later, Yohei enters his class and Yuichi pats on his back, apologizing for what happened yesterday. But Yohei gives him the cold shoulder and walks away, making Yuichi a bit frustrated. As soon as Yohei sits on his desk, Aya walks past him, giving him the most disgusted look known to mankind, causing Yohei to wonder what he even did to her. Following that, Cecil enters the class and greets everyone by saying good morning. As expected, all the simps instantly greet her back. Furthermore, she ends up looking at Yohei as well, causing him to get bricked up and his heart to skip a beat. Before long, Asuka appears and informs everyone that they will be exploring a domain today. This will be a core part of their school from now on, which is why he advises everyone to explore every nook and cranny. With that being said, he takes them to a small room that looks like the perfect place to lose their V-cards. He further mentions that there's a lot of space inside and reminds everyone that the domain is for beginners. Additionally, he tells everyone to split according to yesterday's grouping, and when Yohei tries to grab the teacher's attention, Asuka tells Yohei that he screwed up his group exercise yesterday and warns Yohei that if he behaves in such a manner again, he'll be penalized and will have to explore the domain by himself. Furthermore, he comments that the domain is for beginners and an average student wouldn't be in danger, but that's assuming that he's at least an average student. But little does Asuka know that this is exactly what Yohei wants, as he will be able to explore the domain without any worries. Eventually, he enters the domain and is impressed to see how it looks. Apparently, this domain has 3 floors, and on the first floor, the wraiths and the item drop are nothing special. But in order for him to get stronger, Yohei needs to stay here, as this place called the Ruins of Beginning and End is very important for him. Without wasting any time, he summons Gabubai and starts their search. Soon after, he arrives at a room that seems to be completely empty. But knowing that it'll be problematic if he doesn't find what he's looking for, he tells Gabubai to search for any hidden spots. Just then, Yuichi along with his party runs into Yohei, and they start to wonder if he's there because taking down a wraith is too much for him. To his surprise, Cecil comes up to Yohei and asks if he's alone. Yuichi mentions that Asuka made him explore the place by himself and suggests getting out as it's a waste of time. However, Cecil ends up inviting him to join their group, causing the others to call him dead weight and disagree with her decision. This statement makes Yohei see her as more than just the balloons on her chest. In the end, he rejects her offer and thanks Cecil for the invitation. Disappointed, Cecil advises him to be careful and leave. Following that, Yohei notices a pretty bland look on Gabubai's face, and after turning her back on Yohei, she goes and sits in the corner. This makes Yohei wonder if she's jealous, and he reassures Gabubai that it wasn't anything special and Cecil just felt sorry for him. Simultaneously, he steps on a brick that makes a giant gate appear out of thin air. Yohei instantly recognizes it as the door to Paraiso domain, as this is where the true boss of the game lives. Yohei gets hopeful, saying that they won the coin toss and now they can get stronger. But for the time being, he decides to explore the third floor and tells Gobubai that the other students might see the door to Paraiso, which is why he plans to go after school when everyone else is gone. Currently, he needs to go through the beginner's domain first and suggests getting fired up. After school ends, Yohei appears in front of the beginner domain once again, only to be confronted by Sakuya, who questions what he's doing there. A few moments before, Sakuya, the student council president of the school, was walking in the hallways when she heard students talking about her driving away the previous student council president and how she can do anything just because she's the daughter of the principal. Suddenly, someone bumps into her, and that person turns out to be Natsume, who apologizes, saying she didn't notice Sakuya. Knowing that she's always like this, Sakuya decides to let it go and apologizes before leaving. As she continued walking, Sakuya noticed Yohei standing near the domain gate and questioned what he's doing there. Yohei freaks out and shouts her name, causing Sakuya to wonder if they have met before. This makes him apologize, informing Sakuya that he saw her at the entrance ceremony and introduces himself as a student from class 1-2. Sakuya also thinks that a student trying to enter the beginner's domain on his own is a rare sight and decides to show him the way. Furthermore, she tells him not to act coy as it's been a year since she stepped foot inside that domain. With that being said, Sakuya grabs Yohei's arm and forcefully takes him inside. There, her Geist easily takes care of all the monsters while she mentions how nostalgic it feels. Following that, Sakuya notices Yohei staring at him, and when she asks if something is wrong, Yohei comments that she looks pretty strong, to which she replies that her Geist, Guan Yu, is close to being the strongest at the academy. Additionally, she thinks that it's rare for a new Geist user to see her Geist so high-leveled and decided to act how a true senpai should. She then shows him the stats of her Geist, impressing Yohei, who has never seen such great scores even on his test result. Yohei then mentions that he can see her weakness as well, but Sakuya replies that it's not a problem for a nobody like him to know, later wondering if he wants to pick a fight with her. Yohei disagrees and questions if she's bored being the only one fighting the wraiths. This results in Sakuya suggesting going through the entire domain together, and Yohei hesitantly agrees. Before long, they come across Stuart Little's distant cousin, and for this one, Sakuya tells Yohei to fight it. With that being said, he orders Gobubai to fight it, and after managing to dodge an attack, she rushes towards the mouse and manages to land a hit. However, that doesn't even put a scratch on the mouse, causing tears to form in Gobubai's eyes. Sakuya also notices that the Geist seems scared and figures that it's natural as she's not used to fighting. In the end, she asks Guan Yu to support Gobubai, but gets interrupted by Yohei, who yells at Gobubai, telling her not to falter. He further mentions that it's okay if she can't take them down in one hit and tells Gobubai to keep at it, as this way she'll definitely get stronger. As the battle continues, Sakuya can't help but be shocked as so many people use Geist as tools, but she has never seen someone raise their morale like this. Before long, Gobubai manages to defeat it, and after they return to Sakuya, she mentions that it's rare for someone to have a special bond like these two have, and mentions that she has taken a liking to them too. Following that, Sakuya suggests moving forward, but gets interrupted by Yohei, who asks if she doesn't have anything to say about Gobubai's appearance and how pathetically weak they are. Sakuya gets shocked seeing the look in Yohei's eyes and remembers the time her Geist used to be made fun of as well. This makes her figure that Yohei is just like her and tells him that he just needs to train her up, and if he can get her to evolve classes, Gobubai can become even stronger. Additionally, she calls him stupid for giving up so easily, and even compliment Gobubai for having quite a lovely appearance. Her words bring tears into Yohei's eyes, and even he can't believe why he's crying. Both Gobubai and Sakuya get shocked, making them wonder if he's okay. After they get out of the domain, Yohei apologizes while Sakuya questions if something happened, and he lets her know that he's fine. This makes Sakuya think that he appears quite weak compared to the strong-willed stance from before and figures that he just felt uncomfortable. Afterward, Sakuya mentions that he has already entered the domain 2 times, but it feels like he has already built his fighting style, even though the wraith earlier was supposed to be his first real battle. This results in her asking Yohei another question, which is the reason he's fighting them solo. Yohei lets her know that it's because of his homeroom teacher who forced him because he skipped class after she mocked his Geist. Due to this, he had no choice but to fight them solo during the tour as well. Surprisingly, Sakuya then offers him to join another domain exploration, saying that they can even go to the Graham Tower. Even though Yohei's eyes begin sparkling with excitement, he asks for some time as he still needs to explore the beginner's domain and train Gabubai a little more. Sakuya agrees and mentions that it'd be wise to have her help him as she has explored almost every domain in the academy. Yohei accepts and thanks Sakuya while she begins smiling, saying that they are such a delight. With that being said, she decides to return while Yohei plans to train a bit more. On her way back, Sakuya becomes furious and heads straight to the principal's office. The principal. Her father comments on how rare it is for her to talk to him at school, to which she replies that there's something she wants to tell him. Meanwhile, Yohei and Gabubai finally appear in front of the Paraiso domain gate and without any hesitation, opens it. There, they find an entirely different world which comes as a surprise to Yohei. Additionally, he's aware that the true final boss is somewhere around as according to the wiki page. This area was originally a reward for clearing the game and was designed for players who weren't satisfied with the main story. Furthermore, the minimum level for wraiths here is 80, and in other words, even Sakuya's Geist will be considered a small fry here. He advises Gabubai to be careful not to get caught, and with that being said, the two of them begin making their way deeper into the domain. Before long, they come across a giant majestic baddie with melons bigger than Yohei's height. This makes him realize that the wiki page was right and informs Gabubai that this wraith will turn around, and the moment she does, they'll run to the other end of the corridor. As soon as she turns around, the two of them sprint as fast as they can and manage to reach the other end safely. After celebrating the success of their plan, Yohei mentions that they shouldn't encounter any more wraiths. Eventually, the two of them arrive inside a completely empty room, and when Gabubai begins to panic, Yohei lets her know that this is surely the right place. Following that, Yohei steps on a specific brick that causes a treasure chest to appear. Surprised, Yohei decides to do exactly what Wiki told him and puts a rock on that brick to keep it activated. Furthermore, he opens the chest and finds a bottle named Sprint Ball, which increases the speed stats of a Geist. Without wasting any time, Gabubai opens the bottle, and after finding a small ball inside, she devours it, only to find out that it tastes worse than your mom's Thanksgiving turkey. After that, Yohei questions Gabubai if something happened to her body, but even after checking it multiple times, she doesn't feel anything different, which makes Yohei comment that her stats were only supposed to go up by a minuscule amount. Nonetheless, he suggests hurrying up and getting out of the domain. After getting out, Yohei mentions how tired he is, but after a hard slap on his face, decides to go through the domain once again. But to his surprise, Gabubai ends up grabbing his leg with a sad expression on her face. Yohei figures that she seems to be worried about him, and while patting her head, he lets her know that they can't afford to slack off now. In the end, Gabubai agrees, and the two of them appear in front of the chest once again. This time, they find the Sprint Ball once again, which excites Yohei as the wiki came in clutch once again. Apparently, it was written in the wiki that there's a bug in the game, and if they keep that brick pressed, the chest will act as if it's inactivated. This means he can get as many Sprint Balls as he wants each time he exits and re-enters the domain. For now, this is his only hope, but no matter how many times she swallows it, the only thing it affects is her agility stats. Still, he's up to taking what he can get to surpass the main character. Sometime later, Yohei notices that it's raining, and he manages to get 5 Sprint Balls. Additionally, he notices Sakuya waiting for his arrival, and when he asks if something is wrong, she lets him know that she was waiting for his return. Sakuya further mentions that she talked to her father, and they decided to go talk to his parents and apologize together with his teacher. Yohei freaks out and tells Sakuya that she doesn't have to do all that, to which she replies that it's not a good look for the academy. With that being said, she invites him to come along, and before long, they arrive at his house. Yohei seems to be really nervous even though he's just going home, and as soon as he opens the main door, he hears his mother screaming. This causes him to run inside, but gets stopped by Sakuya, who asks him to calm down and just listen to what she has to say. Meanwhile, his mother mentions that an apology wouldn't solve a careless mistake like this, as they could have put her son into some serious trouble. In fact, he could have even become a late-night snack for some Geist. She further says that she didn't even want Yohei to attend the academy, but couldn't help after seeing the smile on his face after Gabubai manifested. Furthermore, she is aware that his Geist looked sickening, and was scared that the other students would say mean things to him which would eventually break him. Not only that, but even his teacher made fun of him, and when Asuka tried apologizing, she yelled at him even louder. asking why she forced Yohei into such a dangerous situation. In the end, his mother decides not to let Yohei attend the academy any longer and tells those two to get out of her sight. At the same time, Sakuya puts her hand on Yohei's shoulder and tells him that he has such a good mother. Yohei agrees, realizing that this is the first time he heard his mother express her true feelings, as up until now, he had been ignoring her. When Sakuya asks what Yohei's going to do, he barges into that room and lets his mother know that even though his teacher and classmates made fun of him, there's a hot chick who praised his Geist, which is more than enough for him to continue going to school. Additionally, he's trying his best to get stronger, and after his mother once again asks if he won't regret this choice, Yohei agrees. With that being said, the three of them leave, and after walking them out, Yohei thanks his mother with a beet red face, bringing tears into her eyes. The next morning, Yohei comes downstairs and greets his mom by saying good morning, and she greets him back. Furthermore, she lets him know that the breakfast is ready, telling him to eat, to which he agrees. Apparently, his mother has stopped being so meek whenever they see each other, and slowly, they have started making progress. At the school, a new teacher takes over, as even though everyone's been told that Asuka is sick from a sudden illness, she has actually been placed on house arrest. The new teacher mentions that the Graham Tower domain will now be accessible to everyone, and sophomores will be able to guide freshman students on a tour of that domain. Additionally, the Graham Tower is a requirement for all freshmen, and the teacher advises them to give it their all. Later that day, Yohei finally appears in front of the Graham Tower, and so does Sakuya, who lets him know that today's survey will just be the two of them. She further reassures him that she can conquer it alone and can take care of him. Yohei replies that he isn't worried at all, but Sakuya mentions that he seems pretty nervous to her. With that being said, it's their turn to enter the domain. Once inside, Yohei notices that the atmosphere is completely different compared to the beginner's domain, and remembers that it has around 60 floors, and even the first floor is twice as big as the beginner's domain. Level 30 is recommended to clear the domain, but Yohei knows that it'll be challenging for a pathetic failure like him even if he's level 90. Furthermore, it is advised to party up with multiple other freshmen to beat the domain, but knowing that finding water in the Sahara Desert is easier for him than finding a friend, it'll be quite difficult for Yohei to level up. To cheer him up, Sakuya slaps his back and tells him to stop worrying, reassuring Yohei that she'll definitely make him stronger, causing a big grin to appear on his face. Following that, Guan Yu continues defeating all the wraiths, and Yohei notices that he's starting to level up as well, and is getting more XP as the wraiths are stronger. This results in Sakuya wanting to see the stats of Gobubai and notices that she has improved quite a lot, which makes Sakuya believe that he has been working hard. She also notices that her agility is the most prominent and wonders if it's her special trait. Nonetheless, she's surprised that he made this much progress from the beginner's domain and calls him amazing. This reminds Yohei of all the hard he put into improving these stats, and thinks how Sakuya always says the right things to encourage him. He wonders if there's something he can give to her to repay this kindness, and suggests going even further. Suddenly, he runs into Natsume, who came to the domain with Yuichi and the others. Both the groups get shocked seeing each other, and Yuichi informs Natsume who Yohei is. While Gobubai gets a bit freaked out seeing Natsume, an evil look appears on her face. Natsume then mocks Sakuya for babysitting a mere goblin and asks if that thing's really worth spending her time on. Both Yuichi and Aya begin laughing while Yohei begins to panic, but just then, Sakuya lets Natsume know that she doesn't seem to have an eye for talent. Natsume replies, telling Sakuya that she talks big and suggests making a bet. If Sakuya can manage to get Gobubai's stats to match that of an average freshman, she wins, but if she fails, Natsume wins. Yohei figures that she found out about Gobubai's stats from Yuichi and asks Sakuya not to take the bet, but to his surprise, she ends agreeing. Natsume begins laughing and makes fun of Sakuya for being confident, and Sakuya lets her know that Yohei will surely live up to her expectations. This makes Natsume ask Sakuya to do something for her if Yohei fails, for instance, stepping down as the student council president, saying that she only got that position due to being daddy's little princess. Shockingly, Sakuya agrees without any hesitation, and Natsume, with excitement in her eyes, asks the others if they heard Sakuya, to which they all agree. She then tells Sakuya that she can't back down as they are all witnesses, but gets told by Sakuya that she should be worrying about what she'll make her do when Yohei achieves it. Natsume, full of confidence, agrees to reveal her flatties and prostrate in front of Sakuya if that happens, and even though her doing all that is worth nothing to Sakuya, she still agrees to these terms. With that being said, Natsume and the others leave, while Sakuya mentions how annoying they are. Yohei asks if she's really okay with all this, and she tells him not to worry as this is a bet between her and Natsume, telling him that all he needs to do is continue what he's been doing. This ends up motivating Yohei, and he asks Sakuya for a favor, saying that the academy will be closed over the holiday and requests getting a special permission to enter the domain over break, to which Sakuya agrees. Furthermore, he asks Sakuya to come with her as well, and she gladly accepts this request as well. After thanking her, Yohei realizes that he's got only 2 months left and decides to get stronger even if he has to use the wiki. As they continue, Sakuya advises Gabubai to counterattack, and after listening to her advice, she manages to defeat the wraith she's fighting. Sakuya compliments them for doing a good job and suggests stopping for today as the next floor is floor 10. This makes Yohei question why they always stop at floor 10, to which she replies that they should wait until midterms before trying to go past floor 10, as at this rate, they should be able to cross it by the 3rd semester. This makes Yohei realize that Sakuya has been helping him while keeping his well-being in mind. Furthermore, he tells Sakuya that he has some errands to run on Saturday, which is why he can't go with her like they usually do. But when she asks him about it, Yohei starts to hesitate, making Sakuya take the hint and tell him to inform her once he's done, as she'll be at the academy after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Additionally, she allows him to enter the Graham Tower, but warns him not to go past the 5th floor, to which he agrees. Once outside, Sakuya says her goodbyes and Yohei thanks her for the help, completely unaware of the shoddy eavesdropping. The next day, Yohei is about to head home but gets interrupted by Cecil, who calls out his name, saying that she has something to tell him. When Yohei asks her about it, she invites him to come to the Graham Tower domain with her. This makes Yohei question why it has to be with him, and Cecil lets him know that she saw him coming out of that domain yesterday with Sakuya. She further mentions that he has been going in that domain a lot while she hasn't been there since the day of their survey, which is why she wishes to go with him. However, Yohei lets her know that Yuichi or Aya might be a better fit, but Cecil replies that she doesn't get many chances to group up with him and mentions that she'd rather be with Yohei, who's got a lot of experience while holding his hands. As expected, the touch of the baddest girl in school causes Yohei to get bricked up, and he agrees to her request. When Yohei asks when she wants to go, Cecil replies that she's busy on the weekdays and suggests going on Saturday morning, deciding to meet up at 8 in the morning. Eventually, on Saturday, the two of them meet up at the school gate, and after greeting each other, they decide to get going. After arriving at the domain, Yohei lets her know that he'll head inside, but Cecil suggests checking out the stats of each other's Geist first. Without thinking much, they both exchange the tablets, and Yohei notices that her Geist stats are the same as mentioned on the wiki page. This results in him complimenting her, knowing full well that only the level is amazing, the stats not so much. Following that, she uses her Geist to take care of all the wraiths on the 5th floor, and after he praises her, Cecil begins smiling, causing the simp to get flustered. Afterward, she suggests going to a higher level and reassures Yohei that she'll be fine by grabbing his arm. Yohei begins to panic after feeling his arm brush against her pink pepperonis and ends up agreeing to take her up to the 10th floor. Before long, they arrive at the 10th floor, and before Yohei can even stop talking, she begins attacking the monsters and mentions that even the 10th floor doesn't seem that bad. This makes both Gabubai and Yohei look at each other, deciding to get stronger. Then, Yohei suggests heading back, but Cecil insists on going to the 11th floor, begging him by holding his hand, and after seeing the look on her face, Yohei can't help but agree to her request. Just like that, the two of them arrive at the 20th floor, and Yohei seems glad that he used the information from the wiki page to choose the safest route. Nonetheless, he can't help but get disappointed after seeing the difference between him and Cecil. However, Gabubai grabs his clothes and gives him a smile, making Yohei pat her head and remember that they will be getting stronger as well. With that being said, Cecil suggests heading to the next floor, and Yohei decides to head up the stairs and give her the signals if it's all good. But as soon as he starts going up, Cecil uses her powers to attack the stairs and block his way back. Yohei freaks out and, not knowing Cecil is responsible, begins asking if she's alright. But to his surprise, she begins laughing and calls him an idiot with a heart of gold. Furthermore, she mentions that anyone could have seen this from a mile away and lets him know that she's the one who blocked the stairs. When Yohei questions the reason, Cecil replies that he's a creep who's always calculating the curves of her body and started acting chummy with her just because she threw a few kind words at him. Additionally, she mentions that Yohei trying to get ahead of everyone, but getting injured due to an unexpected incident and even dying seems like a pretty realistic scenario. With that being said, Cecil decides to head back, telling him to have fun while trying to get out. Frustrated, Yohei begins to punch the floor, but Gaobyubai ends up grabbing his arm, telling Yohei to stop. This comes as a surprise to him, and he mentions that she must be sad having such a weakling as her master. But Gaobyubai disagrees with tears in her eyes and begins removing the rocks herself. This makes Yohei realize that she'll die if he dies as well, and seeing her work hard reminds him that a Geist and their user are the same, and if the Geist gets hurt, the user does as well. This results in him slapping some sense into himself, deciding to start getting out of here and get stronger to make that busty exhibitionist regret it. With that being said, the two of them work hard removing the stones and eventually manage to make an opening. Excited, both of them high-five each other, later noticing that both of their hands are pretty busted up. Before long, they arrive at the 12th floor without running into any wraiths. Yohei figures that he just needs to make it back to the 10th floor as it's pretty easy from there on. Furthermore, he reassures Gaobyubai that they are almost there and thinks about how they might run into a stone wolf that is a wraith made up of stone. If speed is taken into consideration, Gaobyubai has them beat, but she loses in every other aspect. But just when he thinks that there aren't many of them around, he notices a pack of stone wolves sleeping in the path he needs to take. Yohei can't believe they are present in front of the stairs of all places and starts looking at the wiki to find another way out. Just then, he notices floor traps on this floor and realizes that there's one pitfall at the dead end. An idea pops in his head, and he asks Gaobyubai if she wants to join him on this mission. Following that, she appears in front of the sleeping pack of wolves and her presence ends up waking them up. Without wasting any time, they begin running after her. Apparently, Yohei told her to grab their attention and lead them to the dead end. Yohei wishes that he was the one doing this, but with his toothpick-shaped legs, they'd definitely catch up with him. As she keeps running, Gaobyubai arrives at the end dead, and as soon as the wolves are about to jump on her, she steps on a brick, causing the ground beneath them to disappear. While Gaobyubai manages to grab onto the edge to save her life, two wolves also end up falling down. However, one of them somehow manages to stay back, and just as Gaobyubai begins to think that she's done for, Yohei kicks the last remaining wolf into the pit and manages to save Gaobyubai. After pulling her to safety, both of them take a sigh of relief, and with a smile on their faces, they high-five each other. With that being said, Yohei suggests making a run for the stairs before the wolves jump back up. As they continue running, the path to the next floor appears in their visions. Excited, Yohei lets her know that they just have to run a little more when suddenly, one of the wolves appears right in front of them. Simultaneously, Yohei trips and falls onto the ground, giving the wolf an easy target to feast on. Out of nowhere, the wolf is sliced into half, followed by Sakuya calling out Yohei's name. She asks if he's fine, and after seeing Sakuya's face, Yohei gets relieved but ends up losing her consciousness, making her even more worried. Sometime later, Yohei wakes up in the infirmary and gets shocked by Sakuya's voice, who is glad that he woke up as she was quite worried because Yohei suddenly passed out. But before he can even reply, she begins yelling at him for going past the 5th floor. Yohei notices that her eyes are red and wonders if she's tearing up, which makes him regret his actions even more. Following that, he tries to apologize and gets scolded by Sakuya, who tells him never to do anything dangerous again. Additionally, she mentions that there was another student she met and was terrified after finding out that he was trapped. After thinking a bit, she remembered that it was Cecil, and she told him that it was Yohei who forced her to go this deep in the domain. However, Sakuya is well aware that there isn't a trap like that in the Graham domain and asks Yohei if something else happened. With that being said, Yohei explains everything to Sakuya, and regrets being brainwashed by one of her Geist's abilities. Nonetheless, Yohei believes that it's his fault as he was pretty stoked to have such a busty baddie fight alongside him. Furthermore, he reassures Sakuya that he isn't trying to weasel his way out of ditching her and mentions that he's ashamed for breaking the promise he made with her. Suddenly, Sakuya gives him a big tight hug and lets him know that it's okay and that he doesn't have to shoulder everything himself. Additionally, she promises to shoulder it for him and asks Yohei to let his true feelings out. Hearing this statement makes Yohei tear up, causing him to cry like a waste of space. Afterward, he apologizes once again and gets told not to worry about it. She then notices that the look in his eyes is back to normal, the strong eyes shrouded with determination and will. Following that, Sakuya reassures him that all three of them will get stronger together, which reminds Yohei that Sakuya has always believed in his since the moment they met. Later that day, he takes her to the Paraiso domain and lets her know that he found it by accident the first time he entered the domain. Sakuya can't believe something like this is present as she had never heard of it before. Yohei figures that it's because the difficulty of the beginner's domain is pretty low, and no one bothers to scope this place out. Sakuya agrees while Yohei thinks how he only knows about this place thanks to the wiki page. Sakuya then suggests entering the domain, but Yohei tells her to wait and lets her know that the wraiths beyond the door are extremely powerful and advises her not to fight them. Sakuya argues that it's the beginner's domain, to which Yohei replies that the door leads to an entirely different domain. With that being said, the three of them enter the domain, and she's shocked to see how it's a completely different world. Before long, they run into the giant mommy soldier, and Yohei once again runs past it alongside Sakuya as soon as the wraith turns around. Once they reach a safer spot, Sakuya confronts him for risking his life like this for the past few months, to which he replies that the wraiths move like this, the same way he comes each time, and don't notice a pathetic shrimp like him. However, she's still furious and tells him not to do such dangerous things on his own. Just in case, she ends up summoning Guan Yu and asks if he wants to take her somewhere, to which Yohei agrees. Following that, they appear in front of the treasure chest, and realizing that this is what Yohei was after, she opens it and finds the sprint ball inside. She's shocked to find out the unlimited spawn glitch, and Yohei further mentions that it's thanks to this that Gobyubai managed to grow this much. Sakuya gets even more shocked seeing Gobyubai having an A+ in agility and comments on how it's even better than Guan Yu. Furthermore, she realizes that Sprint Ball doesn't boost agility this much and questions just how many times he had to revisit this place, to which Yohei replies that he stopped keeping track halfway through. Sakuya clenches her fist after hearing this, but to his surprise, she pats her head instead, saying that her instincts were right and that he really is an amazing guy. Afterward, he gives the Sprint Ball to Gobyubai, and after eating this one, her agility stats are raised to S. Gobyubai is overjoyed by this achievement, and Sakuya reminds him that now they have to change her class. But just as they are about to leave the dungeon, they notice the giant wraith staring at them, leaving both Yohei and Sakuya terrified. Yohei mentions that the wraith shouldn't be moving like that, and Sakuya apologizes, saying that this might be her fault as Guan Yu has an intimidation skill that is supposed to intimidate nearby opponents, but that wraith must have sensed it. Luckily, she can't get in due to her size, but they can't stay there forever as well. After thinking for a while, Sakuya decides to buy some time and asks Yohei to run away, but he argues that even with Guan Yu, she won't be able to beat the wraith. However, Sakuya reassures him that she isn't going down with a fight, but to her surprise, Yohei still disagrees, telling her not to look down on him as he won't run away, leaving her behind. With that being said, he tells Gobyubai to use that thing and tells Sakuya that if they're running away, they'll run away together. After some time, the wraith notices that they are not present there anymore and goes away. Apparently, Yohei's plan is to first hide and return Guan Yu, so the intimidation effect is no more. Following that, he asks Gobyubai if she's ready, to which she agrees and runs outside. After appearing behind the wraith, she opens the bottle in her hand and throws the liquid at the wraith, which she manages to slice in half without any difficulty. After that, the wraith uses her cold breath ability to freeze the surroundings, and seeing the ice come closer, Gobyubai starts running away. Simultaneously, she opens the second bottle and spreads the liquid all around the place. Yohei notices that it's all going according to plan and asks Gobyubai to just do a little more. Apparently, if they just made a run for it, the wraith won't stop attacking as she's already locked on to them. Rather than that, his plan is for Gobyubai to sneak up to the wraith and pour the liquid all around her. Curious, Sakuya asks what's inside the bottle, to which Yohei replies that it's filled with petroleum. Following that, he throws a lighter on the ground and tells Gobyubai to jump at the same time. The whole floor starts to burn, forcing the wraith to back away. Knowing that she's weak to fire, Yohei figures that they can use this opportunity to sneak over to the other side without getting noticed. Following that, he tells Gobyubai to run away, but just as she starts sprinting, Gobyubai trips and falls onto the ground. Yohei runs back to her and tries picking her up when suddenly, the wraith slams her hand onto the ground. Just then, she's about to crush them like some annoying mosquitoes, and just in time, Sakuya yells Guan Yu's name and she manages to strike the wraith. Following that, the battle between the two of them begins, and somehow, Guan Yu is able to defeat the wraith without breaking a sweat. Yohei can't believe that they won, and Sakuya mentions that it was a tough enemy. Additionally, Guan Yu leveled up, and she believes that Gobubai must have leveled up as well. Yohei decides to check and notices that Gobubai is now level 51, causing them to celebrate. When Sakuya asks if something special happens at level 50, Yohei replies that they can now change class. Sakuya questions if it's okay for her to watch the class change, to which Yohei agrees. With that being said, Yohei finally changes Gabubai's class, and to his surprise, she ends up receiving a completely different appearance. A few days later, Yohei is on his way to school, and knowing that his Geist is now the strongest among the first years, he knows that he can't be harassed by them, but at the same time, he doesn't have the energy to deal with them anymore. Just then, he notices Sakuya, and after greeting each other, he questions if she commutes to school around this time, to which she agrees. And when she asks him the same thing, Yohei replies that he's a bit late. Sakuya figures that he's trying to skip classes and reminds him that he needs to think about his academics. Nonetheless, he understands and decides to talk to her father and make sure he gets a different class. However, she still wants him to attend his classes, and when he asks if he really has to, Sakuya tells him that her mother will be disappointed if he fails due to lack of attendance. Not only that, but she wants to see him get one over his classmates. With that being said, Yohei appears outside his classroom, and remembering everything that happened, he begins to hesitate but ends up opening the door. Everyone starts looking at him, and Cecil can't believe that he came back. Yuichi greets Yohei by calling him a goblin, while Aya wonders what Yohei is even looking for. At the same time, Cecil walks up to Yohei and mentions that she is worried as he hasn't come to class for so long. Additionally, she whispers to Yohei, telling him not to do anything reckless, but to her surprise, Yohei pushes her aside and tells her to get off him. Furthermore, he mocks her for saying all that after what she did. This results in Yuichi, the simp, confronting Yohei, asking what he's doing. Yohei questions if he's into Cecil, and lets him know that he got a pretty bad taste. Furious, Yuichi takes out his Geist and tells Yohei to apologize, or he'll make sure that Yohei's never able to step foot in the class again. Yohei reminds him that assault with paranormal powers is a crime, and when he asks Aya to stop Yuichi, she mentions that she doesn't see anything wrong happening. Little does she know that it's pretty convenient for Yohei as well, and he ends up summoning his reformed Geist, now called Shin. Furthermore, he informs everyone that he got a class change, while every one of them were playing around, and asks Yuichi if he's sure about not letting him step into the school again. This makes Yuichi order his Geist to attack Yohei when suddenly, Shin appears behind them and uses her ability named Bind. Unable to move, Yuichi questions what he did, to which Yohei replies that it's Shin's ability, and with her script, there's a lot she can do, which involves preventing their movement, stealing their vision, or even eliminating them. With that being said, he promises to forgive Yuichi if he begs for forgiveness, and at the same time, Aya tries attacking Yohei, but is told not to move. Shin appears behind her as well, and Yohei comments on how a proper class rep wouldn't do something so pathetic. Following that, he turns his attention towards Cecil and asks what she is going to do if he were to talk about what happened. Just then, Sakuya enters the class and tells Yohei to stop, as this is good enough. Cecil uses this chance to push Yohei aside and begins complaining to Sakuya about how Yohei is bullying everyone. With an innocent look on her face, she starts asking Sakuya to stop Yohei. But to Cecil's surprise, Sakuya replies that there's no way Yohei would do anything like that, and remembers that she's the same girl she met back then. Furthermore, she thanks Cecil for what she did, to which Cecil replies that anyone would have done it as well. But Sakuya adds that it was thanks to her that she was able to save Yohei and find the truth, including her involvement. After calling her a lowlife, Sakuya mentions that she has already informed the administration about everything. Having no other choice, Cecil tries to tell Sakuya that it's a misunderstanding, but gets told that there's no way Yohei would do such a thing. Following that, she lets everyone know that he's a man even she holds in repute and won't forgive any more attacks on his character. After that, she gives her hand to Yohei, and after holding it, he decides to walk this path along with his best allies to change the outcome of this story, and to make sure Sakuya doesn't face that sad ending. He'll create that perfect future. Do you think Yohei and Sakuya might start dating each other? Comment Geist if you'd like a part 2 of this series. As usual, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.